they're coming in with this assertive kind of masculine energy, basically what it is, and they couldn't turn it off when they got home. And so this ends up over time is it just becomes a problem, and it's like it's one option. And you know me and my work, I always talk about you've got to have both options. You've got to have that more masculine and also the more feminine approach, which is absolutely our anti-assertive method here, right? Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome, everyone. Hi, Makena. Welcome to the Way of the Muse podcast. Excited to be here today. This is a great topic. You want to share with them what we're talking about today, Makena?
Yeah, so we're talking about the anti-assertive method to asking for what you want. So there's a lot of talk out there about being assertive, and we're going to talk about how this can actually work against you sometimes. There's a time and a place, I think, for assertiveness, but it can also work against you in communication. And why does this create resistance? Why does this sort of slow things down when it comes to really getting the result you want? And we see this a lot in very successful women, right, Gigi?
Yeah. A lot of leadership. I think women are taught to be assertive. And like I said, there's a time and place for it. You definitely have to get in there and be willing to ask for what you want. But if it's your only approach, I think there ends up being pushback.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about that? What about assertiveness in the traditional sense of the word can create a challenge or just not get women quite, and we're talking women, it could be anybody, but generalization here. We work mostly with women in this context. So what is it that comes up here that doesn't work?
Well, the issue is a lot of times with assertiveness is you think about assertive energy, and if you think about the energy behind it, it's usually kind of a bit of a forceful energy because we're going in with, I'm going to get what I want here, right? So there is a tendency to feel almost like it's combative. And a lot of times that's not the intent of the person, right? So, then the other thing is we often will say what we don't want instead of clearly asking for what we want. So in that, again, it creates this pushback with people and conflict often, or just defensiveness. People get defensive.
I guess my question is, who listening to this episode, if someone's not sure if this applies to them, how would they know? So they're like, they're successful. Maybe they think their approach is mostly working for them, but how do you help someone see like, hey, maybe there's an approach that could work better? Or what are the kinds of things they might be running into if they are being assertive, but it's not quite working as well as it could be? Do you know what I'm asking?
Well, I mean, a lot of times, especially for women, when I talk with them, that's really been what's gotten them ahead. They've gotten ahead by being very direct, very assertive, and it's worked to some degree. But what happens again, that is maybe they notice they get pushback in their relationships a lot, both at work and at home. And also, do people kind of skirt around you or withdraw when you start to ask them things? And because it's just become a habit. And, I worked, which we've talked about many times, but I worked in several large corporations and went in and really taught women the skills of how to be more receptive in their communication and asking for what they want instead of this just, being so assertive. And what we found is a lot of these women had, again, they became successful. They were senior VPs, like in JP Morgan Chase. and they had gotten there by this forceful energy. But what they found is that the quality of their leadership and the way they enjoyed their work, they were suffering a lot. And that they did notice they were constantly over time getting a lot more pushback. And then the other thing is when they left home or left work and went home, they were using the same approach at home, and their partners would really push back, that they would
Mm.
be upset because, they're coming in with this assertive kind of masculine energy, basically what it is, and they couldn't turn it off when they got home. And so this ends up over time is it just becomes a problem, and it's like it's one option. And me and my work, I always talk about you've got to have both options. You've got to have that more masculine and also the more feminine approach,
Yeah,
which is our
absolutely.
anti-assertive method here, right?
Or it's maybe an integrated approach is what I usually see with a lot of your communication skills. It integrates both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's three kind of key distinctions we want to make here, three key shifts that people can make to ask for what they want in a different way and get better results. So what's the first one?
The first is to acknowledge before you make a request. I always share this with people is go in, instead of jumping straight into what you want from someone, start by acknowledging what they do really well. And you need to be specific, and you really look and see how they've contributed to your life, or if this is a boss at work, what is it you really admire about your boss, and what do you feel great about that you're learning from him or her. And if you start the conversation like that, and this is not to manipulate, because that's what people say, oh, that's a great manipulation tactic. It's not to manipulate, it's to build a rapport in the conversation, and to also verbally put into words something that you probably think all the time. And when you do that, what you do, you immediately build a strong connection. And from there, then you can go to the next step, which we can talk about in a minute. But some examples of that are, in a team example, you can say something like, listen, when you got me that outline a day ahead of time before the meeting, without me having to ask, it made such a difference in my ability and the way I showed up in the meeting. And even you can take it to further, and you can say, so we closed that deal, and I really want to tell you how much I appreciate, because you were the reason, because I was super well prepared. So in that, the person feels like, wow, I feel really great about this. The other thing is they learn something, and they learned that when they got it to you earlier, that it really was a success. So what do you think they're probably going to do in the future?
Get it to you early again.
Yeah, exactly. And a relationship example is, I really appreciate you cleaning up the kitchen the other night, and I could get right to sleep so I could be fresh and well prepared for my morning meeting. Again, how many times do we think these things like, oh, so appreciate they did that, but we don't say it. And when you say it, it just starts to build again rapport. And then a family example is, I really noticed you've been stepping up and helping out more lately with your little brother, and it's been a huge help. Thank you so much. And so all of these different ways of communicating, they start to build a bridge in our relationships. And it's, Pransky, which is a relationship coach. Well, I think he's a psychiatrist, I think. He and his wife talk about practicing good feelings. And this is basically a way to really start to build your relationships with using your communication to practice good feelings here.
Yeah. And like you said, each of those was very specific. I think that's something unique about what you're describing here as an acknowledgement is to think of something really specific and how it contributed for you. And that's so different than a general kind of, oh, you did great today, or you did great on that. So I love that. Yeah, we've talked about this skill before. I think we have a podcast episode on acknowledgement, which we can link in the show notes if I'm right about that. If I am, it'll be in the show notes. But It's such a powerful skill, and people think, oh, it doesn't matter that much, or it's not going to make that much of a difference. And they're always amazed, right?
They
We
are
have people come
amazed.
back to us and they're just like, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
this changed
Hmm.
everything. This
Yeah.
one thing.
One
Yeah.
little thing. This is where I get, and this is also in relationships with couples, and they just little patterns of communication start to make huge changes, huge, huge, huge changes.
Yeah.
I can't even, yeah, how important it is, the learning these things.
Absolutely. So that's number one, is to acknowledge people
Hmm.
first. And then what would be the second sort of step to this anti-assertive method?
Is to make clear requests instead of complaints or commands. And so that is to start to look at and focus on what is it you want? What do you want? Not what you don't want. The habit and pattern of communication is people naturally fall to sharing what they don't want and then asking for what they want. And again, the minute you start saying what you don't want, most people check out. So
Mm,
that shift is huge, and another like example of that in business is, instead of why haven't you followed up with that client, we've talked about this before, is, could we set up a system where you send up follow-up emails within 24 hours? Or what do you see that could work here? And again, going to the person, if they're actually doing the job, and asking them, what do you see would work here in the future? So, that's a natural thing for you. And then you don't have to think about it. We set up a system there. That really,
yeah.
really works. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, did you have a question, McKenna, or something?
No, I think that's
No.
great. Yeah, giving
Mhm.
some examples of what we would normally probably say versus what, a better approach might be.
Yeah. And then a relationship example is, we never spend enough time together. And this one could be, I'd love to go to that new sushi restaurant, on Thursday night. Do you want to go? I'll make the reservation. And again, the difference in the energy of those two things is like, one is you're on my team, and one is definitely it has a good feeling to it. The other one feels like it's a problem and you're complaining, right?
I just want you to all know that in the outline it said Italian restaurant. Gigi changed it to sushi because she doesn't like Italian food very much. I love Italian food. We know who outlined this podcast. It's Gigi's content, but
Yeah,
yeah, I put the Italian food in there and she
yeah,
wanted sushi.
I was thinking of like pizza or something. I was like, I'm not gonna go get pizza. So I'd like to go
That's a
to a
little,
nice sushi restaurant. So
yeah. But I think a lot of women, or men too, probably do say things like, oh, we don't spend enough time together, or, oh, we just complain about the thing. And you're saying really just, what is it you want there? I'd love to go out
mhm.
to dinner
Yeah.
with you. Could we do that this weekend or something like that? So that's a great one. What about family? You had made a family example earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So family is, instead of complaining, just put your phone away. You're always on your phone. How many times do you hear people say that these days? You're always on your phone, and why don't you just put your phone away? Well, that's asking, but that's complaining, right? And
Mm,
so instead of making a request, hey, let's all put our phones away before dinner so we can really have some quality time together, and we can put them in a bowl here, and then after dinner everyone picks them back up and you can go out on your phone. And again, that's a request, and it's also, it feels collaborative. Again, it feels like something that we all want to do as either, you and your partner or family situation, to where everybody can buy into that.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So step one, again, just to repeat, was acknowledge before you go into anything. And then step two was to really make a clear request um, instead of a complaint or a command. And that's, put your phone away is a command, right? It's
Mhm.
assertive. It's, I'm just going to say what I want or something like that. Whereas we never spend time together with your partner is more of a complaint. So we're giving you different ways that this kind of could show up in your habitual patterns of communication. And most of the time, we're not aware of how we're coming across to people. So it is to kind of take that step back and go, wait, am I complaining? Or am I just kind of commanding or demanding? And if so, how could I make a clear request instead? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then what's the third part of the anti-assertive method?
The third part is share what's true. And, it's so interesting to me always that we have such a difficult time doing this. We use so many other ways of communicating, of complaining or blaming, or instead of just getting vulnerable, and really sharing what's on our heart. What is it that we want here? There's so much power when you do that, that immediately, again, this is one of these areas that people go, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that 12 years ago? And that is, some examples I can give you. Again, the first one in business is, if you have a potential client that, you'd like to work with, you can just say, I do this all the time. I did this for years. I'd love to work with you. I see you have so much potential in you and would love to support you to make your visions and goals happen. Instead of, when you're having to go through a lot of trying to explain to you or tell you all these different things, I just come from a place of truth, because that's truth. And in that, the person has a choice. They either go with it or they don't. And it just simplifies things hugely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really taught me that one. I think that's such a powerful one, is just being honest.
Yeah.
You really see it's
Mm-hmm.
someone you'd love to work with. Like, I'd love to work with you, and this
Mm-hmm.
is why. Or I think that's, or even in a job interview, like, I would really love this job. And if
Yeah.
that's true and authentic and you share why, then there's something people can feel. I think what's great about this third point of share what's true is people can feel truth.
They can feel
If
truth. Yeah.
you're just authentic and you just say what's true or what's on your heart, like you said, people can feel that, and it transmits something to them
Yeah.
so much more than having the right thing to say
Yeah,
or something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second example, which again just sounds so simple, but we forget to say it, is just, I miss you and I'd love to spend some time together. How can we do that? But not I miss you like in a complaining way, just like really heartfelt, like I miss you. I miss being with you. I love when we spend time together. How can we make some time together?
Yeah. So
In
that could be in
that,
a relationship or in a
yeah,
friendship or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and then a family example, if it's with a child and they're not doing their homework and it's constantly a frustration, you can say, just I feel really stressed when your homework's not turned in on time. And do you have any idea how we could do this differently from here on out? Because
Mm.
I don't like, and here's what I would say too, is I don't like having to pester you, and I know you don't like it. And, what system could we set up here to where I don't have to do that anymore? And often
Yeah.
the child will come up with a system immediately, and then they came up with it. And that's the other part. And so then they own it. You're not telling them what to do.
Yeah, and the truth speaking part of that is just like it's really stressful. I feel stressed when this
Yeah.
happens,
Mhm.
which again, I think instead of just like trying to be the parent and say, well, you should da 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 or whatever, it's just like, hey, this is how this feels. Like, what could we do differently? I think that's really
Mhm.
powerful.
Mhm.
So 3 steps here, pretty simple at a high level, but not always easy when we're implementing them. Were to acknowledge before you make a request, to make a clear request instead of a complaint or a command, and then to really just share what's true. And so I'm curious, because we kind of opened up talking about assertiveness. Why does this approach work better than what might traditionally be called assertiveness?
It creates collaboration instead of resistance. You're collaborating with people, you're involving them, you're talking to them instead of just going in and stating what you want. And again, you're making requests without pressure or complaints or demands. You're not commanding to people. And again, people are going to be much more open to helping you get what you want and to doing what you're asking. And then the truth connects, like we talked about, the vulnerability and just stating what's actually true is, when this happens, I feel, disconnected or whatever. And it just doesn't make people wrong. It shares, you're not pointing the finger at anyone. You're sharing what's true for you. You're coming from that place of authenticity. And that really, really connects with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So for those of you listening, real life application, how do you actually go out and apply this? We've turned each one of these steps into a question that you can ask yourself. So you could write these down if you want. One of them is just, in whatever dynamic you want to be having this communication, how has that person contributed to your life lately? And be specific. So really, think of something specific that you can acknowledge them for. And then secondly is, what is the result that you want? What result do I want in this, request? What is it that I would love to have here? Again, not a complaint, not a command, but just what would I love here? And then third is, what is my vulnerable truth? Is there a vulnerable truth? There may not always be, but sometimes it is to just say like the truth of how you're feeling or what's going on for you. And that can be really, really powerful as well. So 3 questions there. And it's great to just think about, again, like we always say, pick one relationship where you've been complaining or you've been making commands or you've been super assertive, whether it's at home or at work, and then ask yourself those 3 questions and really try it on. Try this method on and see how it goes. Right, Gigi? That's always what you say.
Yeah. You got to try it and then try it again. And, I say, don't give up the first time if it doesn't work, get in there and practice at least 30 or 60 days.
Yeah. So anything else you want to share with women who are, again, super high powered? Maybe they're working in their jobs or they're, they've been assertive all this time. Or is there anything else you hear from them just before we wrap for today that you think we haven't covered yet?
Just that I think the shift feels uncomfortable because, it's when you're being assertive, there's a sense of being in control. And when people start to shift their communication to being more receptive, I think a lot of times they feel like they're losing control. But again, you're not in control when you're assertive at all. But the feeling is in the body, right? Is this action, and being receptive feels a little bit like, oh my God, more yin, more. And just to start to practice it and practice it I would say practice it at home first, because that's a great place to play around with it. And then start to practice it on different relationships at work, one at a time, and just start to notice the results, because practice does make more perfection on this one. And if you haven't been doing it and you've been assertive for a long time, it is going to feel uncomfortable at first. But trust me, I've taught thousands, tens of thousands of people this, and it makes not just a little change, but a massive change often when you start to shift this.
What is the change that happens?
The change that happens is there becomes more ease in your life, and there becomes you get more of what you want, and without a lot of effort. And in business, so many times with women, I've showed them, and when they started to feel, they're not controlling everything, what they see is also people step up to help them. People listen in such a way, and people start working with them, like we talked about. They start collaborating in such a way that they want to get in and help you solve those problems, because now you'll actually listen. You're not just there with your assertive and what you want. You're actually in there interested, and people sense and feel that. And it definitely starts to change the culture in a company and in a family dynamic. We can tell you client after client after client says, oh my gosh, now my kids are helping out. Now they're actually creating ideas because they feel heard and they feel included.
Yeah. It's not that top down
Yeah.
sort of
hierarchy.
power
Yeah.
over approach. It's really working together while still getting the result that you want most of the time, or maybe even collaborating and figuring out a better result with the other person. So, well, thank you for sharing your communication wisdom. There's so much gold in this episode. I'm really excited to share this with everyone. And then if you have someone in your life that you think would get value from this, please share the episode with them on whatever platform you listen on. There's usually a share button, so you can just copy that right there and send it to them. And that really helps us get the word out. And also just, it's a great way to add value to other people's lives if you think of someone when you're listening. And yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you, Gigi.
Yeah, and if you love this episode, please, like you said, share it. But also, what do? We star it, right?
Rate it, review it.
Rate it and review it. I always say
I like just
it.
hearing you say star it always and like comment on it. We've got all kinds of things. Whatever you can do.
Whatever you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at your little platform. Well, every podcast platform is different. You know, if you're on Spotify, I think you can come. I don't know. There's lots of different things, but ratings definitely.
Rating and review, and you're not liking it. All right.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.